We fired that till we ran out of ammunition. And about that time, I think my captain hollered up, he says, "We need ammunition." He said, "I'm calling on the radio and I'm getting no response." He said, "We have to get somebody to physically go back and get it." And there's only one road going out of that pass, and it was on constant fire, you know. So I said, well, I might as well go. So I jumped in the Jeep and I took off, and I went back to the company that was in reserve. This is what they call a weapons carrier. It was full with ammunition. I mean, high explosive, armor piercing and everything. It was already loaded, and the guy was right there sitting there at the truck. I said, "Oh man, God bless you. Let's take this thing there." He says, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't move." So what do you mean you can't move? I said, "Guys are going up there and shot. This is important." So I said, "Well, I'll take it." He said, "You cannot have this vehicle." And I hate to tell you this, but I put my rifle up. I said, "You're going one way or the other."
Welcome to Triumphant Spirit, America's World War II Generation Speaks. This program is a series of broadcasts featuring the stories of a generation that fought and won the Second World War. No matter how they fought the war or where, on the home front or the battlefield, each veteran featured on the program contributed valiantly to a victory that changed the 20th century. Here are their stories in their own words. They are stories of actions and deeds that not only helped shape the outcome of the war, but the very world we live in today. Jim, what were you doing before the war? And what was life like for you and your parents?
Well, I was very young, got out of high school. I joined the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. And while I was there, they sent me to cook and baker school, and I put my time in. And previous to that, I had belonged to the Tamaqua National Guard, and so I went back to Tamaqua National Guard.
Tamaqua National Guard was located where?
In Tamaqua, Pennsylvania. And I was in there, and the first thing you know, they went on maneuvers down A.P. Hill, Virginia. We went down there, and at the end of maneuvers, all of a sudden, war was declared.
So you were down there when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I was. And all of a sudden, everything changed. Your whole life, your whole complex, everything what you were doing, the way you looked at things. Everything. Can
you describe that?
Well, you know, it's an eerie feeling because actually I was so mad to think that they bombed Pearl Harbor. All I wanted to do was go to the Pacific. I really wanted to go to the Pacific for obvious reasons. I really did, but we wanted it in Europe, we went to England.
Jim, did the rest of your buddies feel the same way after Pearl Harbor?
Oh yeah, everybody was really ticked off. I mean, you know, really. Can't curse here, but no, they were really angry.
After the declaration of war, what happened with you and your unit?
Well, right away, things started to change. I mean, the way we did things was more exact, more precise. And it was no more fooling around. You know, you'd kid around. You couldn't do that anymore, more or less. And we come back to Fort Meade, Maryland, and they says, we're getting loaded up and we're going to go overseas. It was that fast. And they got us all, and first thing you know, they took us from there. We went to Indiantown Gap. In Indiantown Gap, we're all set, and then from there we went to New York and got on the ship.
All right, now when you say we, were you assigned to a unit at that particular time?
I was at the 805th Tank Destroyer Battalion.
Can you describe what that battalion is all about and what its mission happened to be?
Our mission was an advanced unit because we're more or less, at the time, we had towed guns and we also had 75 millimeter on half tracks. And our job naturally was to destroy tanks. Of course, my particular job at the time, believe it or not, I was mess sergeant. So my job was to get the food going till I went to town without a pass and I got busted. So Captain one day said, "Turn in your pistol and grab a rifle, Serano, you're a rifleman." So I was a rifleman, and I started taking a little bit of basic training in England, and stayed there until we got into North Africa.
Jim, you said basic training in England. Where were you located in England, and what was the basic training like?
It was more or less, more than anything, it was how to operate machine gun and rifle and things like that. And they taught me more about grenades, grenade launchers, and things of that sort, which I never was. I knew how to fire a gun, but I didn't know the intricacies of and the nomenclature of the gun, how to take it apart and how to shoot properly and stuff like that. You learned all these things from your instructor. And then we had to do marches. Before it was easy. I was a mess sergeant, didn't do anything. But then we had to go in these 10-mile, 15-mile, 25-mile marches in England, preparing us. And what they did is that the 10 best shots in the company would go approximately maybe 100, 200 yards in front of them when you're marching. So in case low-flying airplanes come over there, you'd have to give a warning. So, that was the gist right there. And
do you think that training, Jim, prepared you for what was to come?
Oh, absolutely. It would, especially the shooting and things like that. And they taught me about the different weapons, which I didn't have any training before. I never took basic training. But it was all, here it was, and it was dumped in my lap. And then from England, we went into Africa.
How did you get to North Africa?
We went to Africa by boat, and it was in a large convoy, and we landed at Algiers. And to my knowledge, I don't remember, there was a lot of shelling and stuff going on, but there was nothing too much activity when we hit into port, because I think we went in there like D-Day plus 1 or 2 or something like that. And right away we start going out and organizing and getting all the equipment ready and getting all the machine guns, because a lot of them were, packed, and you had to get all that stuff ready. And
Jim, being in North Africa, what type of adjustments did you have to make because of the weather and the terrain?
Well, it was very hot and it was dusty, and thinking back, it was a little different. I'd been objected to anything like that in my life, and it was something that you just had to move in with it.
Well, after landing at Algiers, your unit moved up to the front, and you participated in the Battle of Kasserine Pass.
Yep, yes, we did.
It's a famous battle because it's the first time the United States Army came up against the German Army, and we did not fare too well. And I would appreciate if we would describe that battle for our audience and why maybe the American Army did not fare that well.
Well, I in all fairness to my captain, he was a great guy, and before we got to Kasserine Pass, and the reason, we were the last outfit to withdraw from in front of Rommel. And the reason for that, there was a Ranger battalion from Donovan's Raiders, and they had marched like 15 miles behind the lines or something like, and they were dog tired. And my captain said, "We're not moving from here till we take this Ranger company out of here." And that's why we were the last ones. When we get up to the pass, they were supposed to blow the pass. Nobody blew the pass, from what I understand. The engineers something got screwed up, and B Company, which I was in, we had 12 guns mounted on half track, 75 millimeter. And of course, being I was what they call security, I was off toward the flank, either on a machine gun or firing my rifle. And when I tell you, you could almost see the whites of their eyes. There were so many of them coming up. You could just close your eyes and just shoot. You had to hit something, you know what I mean?
Jim, were you there at the very beginning of the battle? Or
Right from the beginning.
Right from the very beginning?
Right from the beginning.
If you could close your eyes and describe what took place, I would appreciate it.
Well, the guns were off to my right, and I was up on a ridge, and I was firing down at the infantry that was hiding behind the tanks. The German tanks were
German infantry?
German infantry were coming behind the tanks, like trying to hide. And I think I shot about 6 bandoliers of 30 caliber. And I shot till I ran out of ammunition. And then someone says, hey, we need a little help on this 50. So it was a sergeant and this, at this time I was still a private, by the way. So this sergeant and lieutenant says, Jimmy, just feed it. You ever feed a 50? I said, no. He said, just pick it up. So I was feeding this 50, and they were picking out targets. They were firing back and forth. And I think I don't know how long we were firing, but a shell exploded right in front of us and got the whole gun, flipped the gun right up on top of us. In fact, I was down on my knees, and everybody's got little cuts and things. Not one guy complained. Not one guy said, let's get this darn gun up. Of course, I said a few other words. Let's get this gun up and let's get it moving again. Because 50 caliber, you know, it's pretty big and does a lot of damage. And we fired that till we ran out of ammunition. And about that time, I think my captain hollered up. He says, we need ammunition. He said, I'm calling on the radio and I'm getting no response. He said, we have to get somebody to physically go back and get it. And there's only one road going out of that pass, and it was on constant fire, you know. So I said, well, I might as well go. So I jumped in the Jeep and I took off, and I went back to the company that was in reserve. And I had to tell this part of the story to the lieutenant that was in charge of that company. I called him up the other day. I said, do you remember how I stole that ammunition? He said, what do you mean? I said, you know, the citation says one thing, but the truth of the matter is, I went back there. How could I load a truck up so quickly with this, what they call a weapons carrier? It was full with ammunition. I mean, high explosive, armor piercing and everything. It was already loaded, and the guy was right there sitting there at the truck. I said, oh man, God bless you, let's take this thing there. He says, oh, I can't do that, I can't move. So what do you mean you can't move? I said, guys are going up there and shot, this is important. And I started to get a little angry. And he says, well, I ain't moving. I says, good, I ain't going up there. He says, you're crazy, we can hear over the radio what's going on. Because, you know, they talk back and forth. Every vehicle has a radio, and guys were getting hit and stuff like that. So I said, well, I'll take it. He said, you cannot have this vehicle. And I hate to tell you this, but I put my rifle up. I said, you're going one way or the other. And he says, you're crazy. I said, I'm crazy. I want that ammunition. And he jumped out, and I took that ammunition down that road. And I said, well, here goes nothing. I said, you don't know, you really have no thoughts. You're like a blank. You have one purpose in mind. That's to get to that objective. And I come down there, down the road, and the guys were telling us later, he says, if you know how many shells were missing that thing, I said, yeah, if it had hit one, I would have never known the difference, right? So I got down in there, and I backed up to these half-tracks, and I started distributing.
And the half-tracks are part of your unit, the 805th.
Half-tracks with the 75s. And I started giving them the ammunition and stuff like that. And then I says, you think I ought to get out of here? So I said, I'll go back for another load. Well, it was getting pretty hot over there, you know. And as a matter of fact, I should have brought this in. When the captain was hollering for volunteers, I ran across this one open ground. I looked like I think he was trying to get me whacked. But anyhow, I came across this open ground, and I don't know how this happened, but like I got a direct hit on me from an artillery shell, and I went up in the air, I came down on the ground, and I was like unconscious, right? And I felt like it was like a big cloud of smoke going up, and I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I get up and I'm looking around, and I was dazed and stuff like that, and I said, I'm trying to find out, I'm not bleeding. To my knowledge, I don't remember even having a scratch on me. I don't know how this happened. Somebody seen me, they thought that that was it. Then I ran over to the captain, I says, it'd be a good time to get the hell out of here, And that's when I went for the ammunition.
Jim, for all those actions, you received a special commendation. Can you tell us about that commendation?
Yeah, they all came down one time. They rolled out the battalion one day, and they told me that this was something special, and we want to reward you with this commendation, which says gallantry in action for things that happened in Kasserine Pass. And I get up, and the colonel shook hands with me, the major and the commanding officer of the whole battalion. They all come down, they shook hands with me, and they gave me a piece of paper. And that's a piece of paper. I never got the Silver Star, a piece that says gallantry in action, but I don't know what happened. But I didn't get the Silver Star. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not, And then after that was over there, what do we do next from Africa?
Well, after Kasserine Pass,
Kasserine Pass.
which was a battle that was lost by the American Army.
Oh.
What happened next?
When we pulled back from Kasserine Pass, because we had quite a few wounded that day, and I think 8 of our 12 half-tracks got knocked out. And a friend of mine, this Lieutenant McGurry, says, Jimmy, says, the British need some help. I said, don't look at me. I said, what are you looking at me for? He said, well, we want volunteers. Don't look at me, I told him. He says, come on, let's volunteer. He said, if you volunteer, he says, these other guys will volunteer. I said, well, I'm not volunteering. He said, why? I says, what do you mean? Let the British fight their own battles. He said, no, he said, we're all together. But anyhow, I volunteered. And it was about maybe 25 or 30 of us. And we went up, we had to go across. And, we have to remember, we were tired. I guess we were at least 2 or 3 days up in this Kasserine Pass. I mean, no sleep or anything. And we went back, and we had to go to a place called Thala. And at Thala, we're going to meet up with the British Army. And we got up to this here bivouac point, and we met up with these British, and they looked like a track. They had a complete track. They call them Bren gun carriers, and they carried 4 or 5 or 6 men. I don't remember how many. And so we all went up this road together, but we didn't realize we were in the front. We were right where we were not supposed to be. We went up too far, and in the meantime, I have to tell you, I was tired. I fell asleep. I put my head on a machine gun mount, and I got a blanket over my head, and I'm asleep. And the first thing you know, one of my guys is poking me. He says, Jimmy, you got to put your hands up. I said, what do you mean, put your hands up? He says, we're captured. I said, how the hell can I be captured? I'm asleep. I'm going to quit bothering me. And this guy kept saying, mit der Hand ho Dummkopf. And we have a lot of Dutchmen in my outfit because I'm formerly from Pennsylvania. I said, will you guys quit screwing around? Cut it out, will you? So I put the blanket up, and this guy kept poking me in the ribs. And I said, you better watch out what the hell you're doing. You're going to hurt a guy. And he says, holy something or other. I said, that's a German soldier. He says, that's what I've been telling you. This guy's poking me with the damn rifle. Man, he kept saying, put your hands up with the Honda Ho. So I put my hands up. I said, where the hell did he come from? I didn't even realize. We're so dead tired, and I fell asleep.
You rode right into the front lines of the
right
German
up there,
army.
Asleep. You guys got to sleep once in a while, So anyhow, and we all got up, and they were going around. Now, remember that there was 2 tanks that were blocking the road. One tank was trying to protect this other tank because it had blown the track. It must have hit a mine. And these guys were around there trying to help this other track. So what they did, they were trying to hurt us. There wasn't too many guys. There was, I said 5 or 6 Germans or 7, 8, I don't know. But they had machine pistols. And the guy was saying, line up. Oh, before we lined up, I'm sorry I forgot this. We were all in our Jeep. I was in my Jeep. And all of a sudden, the turret opens up, and this German officer stands up very straight, and he says, "Dismount from your vehicles." And he said vehicles. "Drop your arms and dismount from your vehicles now." And nobody moved. So this first tank that was over there, he fired 230 caliber machine guns over our heads like this. Now, he could have dropped them down, and he could have got a lot of guys. He fired over our heads. Then we moved, and we all moved, and we're packed together. We're packed on the side of this tank. And I was this far from this tank, and I remember being a Mark IV tank. And I said, "Boy, look at that, Mark IV tank." And the guy said, "What are you worried about it?" Well, I figured, the guy didn't shoot us then. Maybe we're going to get to it. Then the guy opened this door up, and he put out a machine pistol or a machine gun, and he hollered, "Line up." I said, "This is not good." And right away, the thought hit me. If he starts shooting, I'm going to drop the gun and play dead. I swear, that's one time I had a thought. But what they started doing, they started trying to get us together. They couldn't fix that tank, so the tank turned around, started going down the road. And the commander of that tank would shoot this now got to be nighttime, and he would shoot a flare in the air. Beautiful flare, just like daylight. And as the flare would come down, you hear the pop, and he'd pop another flare going up into the air. So as we did, we were on the outside of the tank.
Why was he popping the flares, Jim?
So he could keep track of you. They didn't have that many watching us, but they were on the perimeter. But I was over here right next to the perimeter, but as we were doing, I started to do like a little dance. As I started doing like this, I got to the outer perimeter. I said, if he shoots these guys, he's got to shoot them guys, I'm going to drop. So I got way on the outside, and right next to this little short guy from the British Army, like myself. And every once in a while, I'd see him going like this. He was looking around very gently. And of course, we had our hands up in the air, and we're going around that. And all of a sudden, this all took place within about 2 hours. Time stands still. You can't, I don't know exactly. But all of a sudden, I don't know how far we were up the road, and the flare would pop, pop, and in between the pop, there's maybe a fraction of a second that it gets dark. And he dropped his knees, I dropped my knees, we rolled down in the ditch, and we laid there till everybody kept going. So they all passed us out, and I'm saying to myself, what am I doing down here? I gotta be crazy, I'm gonna get shot. But of course, I didn't move either. And after they moved up, then we come back to the area where we were.
You and your British buddy.
My British buddy and I. And what do you think happened? We almost going to get shot by the British because we're coming into the front line, and this guy he's starting to holler. I think that night the password was applesauce, and he's saying apple. I said, what is he saying? What's the password? I said, I don't know what the password is. I said, I came from Kasserine Pass all the way across up there. We're like about 30 miles or something like that, I guess. And I said, I don't know what the password is. And actually it was applesauce. And so I really started cussing. I said, I don't know what, blah, 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 blah. And I really gave him some profanity. And I remember this British soldier, he says, he says, it's got to be an American. Nobody could curse like that. So I guess cursing saved somebody's life. So we both got in there. They actually were watching us, but they couldn't shoot because we were too many the way we were around this tank. But as we got back to the tank, I says, let's go see that tank. He says, why? So let's go see the tank. So I got into the tank, and I got a flare pistol out of this tank, some other souvenirs.
This is the German tank.
The German
after the British
tank.
had moved forward.
British had moved forward, and I got down there. I figured I was captured. The war was over for me. I'm a free agent. I'm going to go home. But see, they didn't take my name, rank, and serial number. They didn't take any of that. If they did. So anyhow, I got up in there, and as I jumped down off the track, I almost jumped on this guy down there. It was a German soldier laying down there, and he is pretty badly wounded, and he's saying something to me, and I don't know what he's saying. And the British officers come over, and he says, he's wounded pretty bad. He said, we got to pick him up and take him to the aid station. Now, I was asleep. I don't even know where I'm at. All I know, they're shooting this way, so I got to go that way to get the heck out of here. So I get in my Jeep. I'm trying to get around there, and this major, British Army, come over and takes the Jeep off me. He says, I'm commandeering this Jeep. I said, this is American property. He said, we're in the same army. He said, no, we ain't. You're British, I'm American. This is American property. Well, anyway, make a long story short, he says, help me pull this wounded guy out. So we pull this wounded guy out from underneath the tracks, and we put him back like a weapons carrier. Yeah, I got on this weapons carrier, and he says, take him to the aid station. I said, I don't know where the aid station is. So anyhow, we picked him up, and we went, I bet we didn't even go 1 mile. And there was an evacuation hospital. And we put this guy up on the table. I said, okay. I says, I'm out of here. And they started asking me questions. Where'd you got the guy and blah, 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 and all that kind of good stuff. So I told him how we found him and everything like that. And he says, so they started to take this guy's clothes up. He had multiple wounds, you know.
This was the German.
The German. Right. So as they were trying to take his wristwatch up, and I hear him say 9, 9, and he'd pull his hands down. Then he'd put his hand over to me like this. I said, what's he doing first? So there was a minister or some man of the cloth there, because I remember seeing the cross and all. And he says, I think he wants you to have his watch. He says, why would he have me? He says, he remembers you picking him up and bringing him here, you know. So sure enough, I took his watch up, and he says, thank you, Dankeschön. I remember that. And it was a cheap watch, a regular issue watch, you know, with the canvas strap on and stuff like that. No sooner they started operating on it, the Germans start shelling. They're shelling the hospital. They hit that vehicle that I was in, that weapons carrier. They hit that and blew to the left front tire. So I go out there, I said, I can't even get out of here. So I try to get a couple of British soldiers, because this was a British evacuation hospital, by the way, to help me. And they said, oh, we're getting out of here. So every soldier has what they call a musette bag, the little bag with, everybody had like a carton of cigarettes in. I said, I'll give you a carton of cigarettes if you help me change the tire. Because I couldn't change that tire. You know how big them tires are? I could never even move it. They moved the tire, they put the tire, I each gave them a carton of cigarettes. I got the other tire and I kicked it over to the bank. You know what they did? They went down and got that tire and bolted it back onto the side. You can't waste that. I said, I'm getting out of here. So the first thing you know, I must have about 15 guys on the back of that truck. And I'm trying to get out of there because they're fighting here, I'm going that way. Because I figured the war was over for me. But on the way down the road, unfortunately, we had an accident. We hit a car head on. And the car flipped up and we had to tear the door open, and there was a Frenchman in there. We pulled him up and we laid him on the ground. We gave him a little first aid and stuff like that. But the impact broke something that we couldn't steer the thing. So you could just go about 5 miles an hour. But you know what the impact? These fellows I had in the back, they flew out. A couple of guys broke their arm. One guy broke his leg. I mean, you know, this is at night because I don't want to go off the road too much. Because on account of, you know, the road.
So this accident took place at night?
This took place at night.
You were driving? I
was driving. All of a sudden, there's an armored column moving up. And I said, hey, buddy, what outfit is that? And the guy opens the door. He says, 805th Tank Destroyer Battalion. I said, oh, never mind. The guy said, James Serano, where you been? I said, oh, not again. He said, pull your vehicle behind us and get back in line. I said, but I've been up there. He says, you're going back again? I said, not again, but I did. I had to pull back in line, and now we're going back up again. I mean, it's crazy, right? How much can you do?